Okay, so there's been an interesting development today regarding Chuka Umunna, who is a London MP and he had been running for leadership of the Labour Party. Although his bid has only lasted a few days. The development today is that he's withdrawn the bid. Now, this is an interesting story for a number of reasons. I find it quite striking because Chuka Umunna has been sort of seen as a rising star of the Labour Party ever since he was elected in 2010. They might think, well, that's only 5 years. It's not a very long time to be an MP, to be considering leadership of a party. But he was among the best known MPs within the party. I believe he was shadow business secretary. Well, I presume he still is. But he's sort of been seen as one of the future stars, along with people like Rachel Reeves, Tristram Hunt, and a few others. Um, Now, the reason that I say that is because he's had more media appearances than you would expect from new MPs. Generally, he's he's been in the public spotlight a fair bit. So anyway, the story reads as follows. This is from the BBC. Shadow Business Secretary Chuka Umunna has withdrawn from the Labour Party leadership contest just days after throwing his hat into the ring. The MP 36 said in a statement that he was not comfortable with the level of pressure and scrutiny that came with being a leadership candidate. Mr Umunna also cited concerns about the impact of the bid on his family. BBC political editor Nick Robinson said the MP's team insisted no unwelcome press story lay behind the move. But Mr Umunna had been shocked by the level of scrutiny of himself, his mother, sister and girlfriend, he said. A rising star of the party, Mr Umunna was first elected to Parliament in 2010 before joining the shadow cabinet. He confirmed his candidacy for the Labour leadership via a post on his Facebook page on the 12th of May, saying the party under Ed Miliband had failed to appeal to enough voters in England. But on Friday he said he had not found the leadership bid a comfortable experience. I understand that Chuka Umunna has told friends that this is not right for me or for people close to me. I'm human, the rest of my life is more important to me than politics. This is from the BBC political editor Nick Robinson. The shadow business secretary has been distressed by the degree of scrutiny he, his family and his girlfriend have come under since he has declared his intention to stand for the Labour leadership. I am told that includes supporters waiting outside the houses of relatives late at night. Friends of Mr Umunna deny that he is nervous of not getting the support of enough MPs to run for the leadership. They point out that he already has half the necessary names and there are some weeks to go. The shadow business secretary now wants to play a leading role in arguing that Britain should stay in the EU and does not rule out seeking the leadership in the future. He said he thought he had understood the scrutiny and attention the leadership contest would bring, but added, however, since the night of our defeat last week, I've been subject to the added level of pressure that comes with being a leadership candidate. The shadow business secretary said he had wondered if it was too soon for him to stand for the leadership, and I fear it was. Sad indictment. He also cited concerns about the impact on the rest of one's life and those close to him. Consequently, after further reflection, I am withdrawing my candidacy, he said. Mr Umunna said he would continue to serve as a shadow business secretary and hope to play a leading role in Labour's campaign to keep the UK in the EU during the forthcoming NI referendum. Commenting on the news, Labour former Culture Secretary Ben Bradshaw, who is rumoured to be considering running for deputy leader, said Mr Umunna was a terrible loss in the field. He told BBC Daily Politics the Streatham MP had been the candidate the Conservative Party feared the most, and if it's a result of pressure on an extended family or an extended group of friends, I think that's a very sad reflection of our political culture, he said. Okay, so I just felt the need to read all of that out to give you the context. Um, I'm not quite sure about this. I think it's an interesting development. Of all the sort of people who were in this field, and of any MPs that would be in the field for leadership, I'm surprised that Mr Umunna would be sort of someone to buy under pressure. He doesn't strike me as that sort of parliamentarian. In fact, there's a few parliamentarians I think that really would buy under pressure like that, but especially not him. So I'm wondering if there's something more to this. On the other hand, if the reports are right that there are journalists waiting outside his relatives' homes late at night, that's an utter disgrace. and no politician's family should have to go through that. I think that scrutiny of him and his politics is entirely valid, and it is valid to ask questions about, for example, some of the positions he may have had in recent years. Now, his team has insisted that there's no negative news story that has put him off running. Rather, it's a pressure. Um, I wonder, could it be the Obama factor? That is to say that if he were successful in his bid, he would become Labour's first black leader and potentially the country's first black prime minister. So I wonder if there's more scrutiny on him than there would be on other candidates, in the sense that there was more scrutiny on Senator Obama, as he then was, than on other candidates. Um, if there is truth in that, if it is a case that there is reporters sort of waiting outside his house and so on, I think that's an utter disgrace, because then you're losing a potentially good candidate. Now, I don't live in Streatham. I don't know what he is like as an MP, and I don't know everything about Mr. Umunna. I don't know all of his policies, and apparently I'm not going to know now because he's withdrawn. So I don't think there'll be time to have a campaign website or something for him to lay out his policies. But I know there's people in the party that don't like him because he comes across as a Blairite. I came across one comment from a Conservative saying it's a great shame because even though they're a committed Conservative, they believe that the opposition needs a strong leader, and Mr. Umunna hadn't been tainted by the last Labour government because he's a new MP. So there's questions here as to why Mr. Umunna has withdrawn. Ben Bradshaw says we need to take it at face value and it's about pressure. And if that's the case, then Mr. Umunna should be given privacy, and he has a right, like everyone, to family privacy. In fact, I would argue every politician, even up to the Prime Minister, has a certain degree of right to privacy, because it isn't the wives or the husbands and the children that is deciding the future of the country, it's the individual. So it's unfair to drag them into it. This has always been a problem in British politics. I mean, I know when she was Prime Minister, there was a lot of pressure on Dennis Thatcher. Theresa Blair was a bit different. I think she enjoyed the limelight, but certainly most prime ministerial families and leaders of families of political leaders do tend to try to stay off the radar as much as they can. But unfortunately, the Daily Mail always finds a way to get into their private life. I mean, that to me is trash journalism. They had a report during the election about the Speaker, John Bercows' wife, having an affair. Now, to me, that is entirely a private matter. Entirely a private matter. That's just a sort of sensationalist, crappy human interest story that really has nothing to do with politics. It is a human interest story for people who like gossip, but I just don't think there's any credit in that. And I don't think it's an asset to our democracy at all to sort of focus on politicians over what's happening in their private lives. Um, France used to be actually quite sacrosanct in this regard, but now the French are starting to sort of do it as well. I'm seeing in a lot of stories emerging about, President Hollande's outside marital issues, whatever. The point here is that, if we're going to put people on a pedestal over every single shortcoming they have as a human being, or not, then we're not going to have any leaders, because it's like you want a sort of factory produced perfect politician, or perfect candidate who has no flaws, no background whatsoever. Now, defenders of that sort of journalism will say, oh, but the public have a right to know what sort of person they're getting. But that isn't really the issue. Yes, the public have a right to know what sort of person is, and I accept it goes just beyond policy. I understand that. You want to know, for example, what sort of temperament the person has, and what sort of interests they have. Fair enough, there might be some personal interest stories there. I accept that it isn't just about what policies they have, but I do think there should be some limits. And I've long argued that there should be laws against the paparazzi, and I suspect that there may have been a paparazzi influence in this. I mean, the only sort of journalists that camp outside someone's house at midnight, that's paparazzi. And now the absolute trash of the journalistic world. I don't consider them journalists at all, in fact. I just believe they're legalized stalkers. And I do believe that no public figure should have to fear their family being put under that sort of pressure. Now, let's say I was a public figure. If I was a single man, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Okay, there might be pressure and I might not like all of it, but at least I would have the peace of mind thinking, well, okay, I'm not married, I don't have a family. But if I was married, or even if I had a girlfriend, as Mr. Umunna does, and I thought that the press were hounding her, I would that would make me very, very angry because it shouldn't be about what about his girlfriend or about his family. Now, having said that, that is his side of the story. We don't know absolutely that that is the case, and there might be something else to this that's making him withdraw. I have to say I am surprised because Mr. Umunna, in fact, at 6 o'clock, I'm going to turn on the headlines now, see if there's any more coverage of this. I just don't see Mr. Umunna as a sort of MP who is sort of shy and reserved. I find it a little bit strange. So it would have had to take some extraordinary pressure for him to make this decision. Anyway, that's just my general thoughts about media scrutiny into politicians' families and how this, in my view, is detrimental to our democratic process. I completely accept that if you're a candidate and you want to lead a major political party, you have to accept scrutiny. I have no problem with that, but I just think that when it comes into getting into the families, it's wrong and it's not an asset to our democracy. But more might emerge from the story than meets the eye, so see what happens.